So, believe it or not, I am actually still doing work in my chosen profession of organizational psychology, and one of the things that I had been working on lately was actually a series of presentations for a group of young professionals about the psychology of office politics and how to gain more influence at work. And I had just done my first session with this group last week. We had 3 more. It was kind of like a workshop style thing, but we split it up into 4 different sessions so that people didn't have to sit on Zoom for hours at a time. So we were going to do 1 session each week on a different component and workshop it. Did my first one last week. It was awesome. I got great feedback. I thought it was going really, really well. I didn't mention politics or my positions at all. And I was actually preparing today to give the second one until I got this email from the board of directors of the organization that hired me and decided to abruptly cancel the contract. They wrote, "Dear Dr. Borisenko, the blank board of directors has determined that your recent positions and posts on your business social media platforms do not align with the mission and values of our organization. Therefore, we have decided to cancel the remaining 3 sessions of the series. We will be paying you the remaining blank that we contracted for. Thank you for your time, and you should expect a payment within the next few weeks." Now, listen, first off, I actually don't post about politics on my business social media platforms. You can look at my business platforms. There ain't nothing about politics on it, but let's just be frank. If you Google my name, you're going to come across social media stuff that talks about what I think and what I believe and what my positions are. And that's just the way it is, man. That's the way the cookie crumbles. I have to tell you that I kind of laughed a little bit that this organization seems to think that they're owning me by paying me the remainder of my fee without requiring that I do any work, which is in the contract, by the way. They owed me that money. They've canceled way too late at this point to get any break on the price that they agreed to pay me. So I didn't feel really bad about that. I was kind of like, well, whatever. But as it turns out, I'm not the only one that's getting canceled for nonsense. In fact, there was this story yesterday, I believe, from Jonathan Turley. The ACLU staffer attacks university for admitting Nick Sandmann while professor denounces his anti-intellectual views. So we're going to read this article about a teenager being canceled or attempting to be canceled by the ACLU. And we're going to talk about how insane this is. But first, let's just do our quick housekeeping business. Folks, I know I've been away for a couple days. I had some nonsense go on in Dallas that I'm sure many of you have heard about, but I'm trying to get back into the swing of things here. And my biggest goal is to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel before Election Day. I am absolutely on track to do that, but I need your help. If you enjoy the content I'm producing and you want to see more of it, please help me out by giving it a subscribe, turning on notifications, giving it a thumbs up, leaving a comment, sharing it out to people who might appreciate it or just might be offended by it. Either way, really. And that'll really help me to continue to grow the channel. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Let's read about what happened to Nick Sandmann. And I gotta say, man, this kid is going to, I am convinced that this kid is going to go on to do great things simply because he has had so much adversity come at him early in life. So what Nick Sandmann is learning right now is resilience. This is the very definition of what happens when you develop a highly resilient personality. You have challenge after challenge after challenge thrown at you, and you navigate them and you overcome them. And so Nick Sandmann, this is going to serve you, my friend. I know the nonsense seems a lot, but hey, you've got a lot of people backing you, and it's only going to help you out in the future. Let's read about what happened. And this is from Jonathan Turley. I have previously written as a long supporter of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, about my concern over how the venerable group has changed its current leadership, including a departure from its long, robust defense of free speech. I agree with that too. I started donating to the ACLU, I want to say it was 2004, 2005, and I gave money to the ACLU because I respected their work on defending the free speech of even the most indefensible people, because that's how free speech works, folks. If you don't defend speech that you find absolutely reprehensible, well, guess what? You are laying the groundwork for your speech to be censored. Free speech only works when we allow the opinions of people who we disagree with, maybe with every fiber in our being, to exist. That's the only way it works, and that is what the ACLU used to do. Back in the day, the ACLU used to defend the KKK, they used to defend Nazis, not because they agreed with them, but actually because they disagreed with them, because they knew if you are protecting the speech of the worst, that means the free speech for the rest of us is protected. Otherwise, it's a very slippery slope, and it entirely depends on who is in power, who gets to say what, and that is not something that we want to get into. Let's keep going. Recently, the ACLU has abandoned its famed neutrality and has not supported some on the right while supporting those on the left. Now, the ACLU's Samuel Crankshaw in Kentucky, or Crankshaw, excuse me. I was thinking like Brian Krakow, remember, like My So-Called Life? I think that was the name I was thinking of. Samuel Crankshaw, not Brian Krakow, although, like, look at this guy. This guy actually, like, Elle points out on Twitter, and if you're not following Elle on Twitter, you need to be following her because she's awesome. I will link her profile in the description below. But as she points out right here, like, this guy looks like every villain in every 90s movie ever made. I had a friend of mine say that, you know, he's getting ready for this guy to challenge him to a ski race down the hill to see whose father gets to keep owning the ski resort or something like that. Because that's, like, this guy's, like, right out of ski school right there. Look at him. He looks like a legit villain. But that's probably besides the point. We shouldn't make fun of people for their looks. I know, but sometimes you just can't help it. These people, they just ask for it. Now the ACLU's Samuel Crankshaw in Kentucky has targeted Transylvania University for admitting Nick Sandmann, who was falsely accused of abusing a Native American activist in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Crankshaw identifies as an ACLU staffer on social media. Despite various media organizations correcting the story and some settling with Sandmann, some in the media have continued to attack him. Yet it is far more alarming to see an ACLU official rallying people against a young man whose chief offense appears to be that he is publicly and unapologetically conservative and pro-life. Crankshaw went to Facebook to alert people that Sandmann was attending the college and expressing veiled outrage that the school would admit someone with opposing views. He warns that this kid is more dangerous than figures like Milo Yiannopoulos. The danger is that a young freshman holds conservative views that are shared by roughly half the country. And let's just go and look at the actual post. I know this is really small, but Facebook is having some issues right now, so I can't access the real post. So we've got this image here. He wrote on Facebook, "Does anyone else think it's a bit of a stain on Transylvania University for accepting Nick Sandmann? I'm sure it's a both sides defense, but it's pretty counter to their mission and other instance of not actually being equal sides to an issue. I think TU should accept anyone who is willing to have an open mind and engage in a debate regardless of their views. That's how we all learn. That's Transy's mission. But this kid clearly is a provocateur in training with no intention of learning." Like, the gall of this guy. The gall of this guy to insinuate that someone who is, he's like 17, 18 years old, has no intention of learning. Dude, who the hell are you? He exists only to troll, intimidate, and play victim. He and his attorney proudly use their national platforms to promote QAnon, which has literally been the direct cause of multiple instances of violence, not to mention all the other batshit stuff. Now, listen, I just got back from Dallas this weekend where I was chased down the street by an angry mob of Black Lives Matter protesters for committing the crime of standing on the side of the street next to Brandon Strzok, who they knew who he was. They didn't know who I was. They knew who he was, and they knew that we were with him, and then chased us down the street and stole and broke the phone of someone we were with, tried to steal and break my phone. One woman ran up from behind and tried to, like, grab around to try to steal my phone while I was literally walking down the dang street. So I don't have a whole lot of patience at this one. Guys, let's let's just cut to the chase. I have run out of F's to give with these people. Like, when I have to, constantly be worried about my safety and security, walking down the street of a city because someone might identify me as a Trump supporter and attack me because of it. No. I'm not playing these games with you, Samuel Crankshaw. Seriously. Like, you don't know what the F you're talking about. He is profoundly defending Kyle Rittenhouse, who murdered 2 people for exercising political speech. I'm not going to make comment on that for fear of YouTube censoring this video, but I think you can all tell exactly where I stand on that particular issue. Ironically, this silenced victim is running with Don Jr., spoke at the GOP convention. He has a bill in his honor in the General Assembly, has attended private schools. Like that's something you should hold against him, that he attended private schools. That's his parents' decision, dude. Has a national law firm representing him. So silent. He is no different than the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos, but he is more dangerous. Having experienced the incredibly high standards Transy requires for admissions, and then holds its students to, it seems a bit like a slap in the face. I hope sometime in a real classroom changes him, but his Twitter and public persona suggest otherwise. Now, I kind of take issue with specifically one of the claims he made here, because I actually started my career as an admissions counselor, so I've played this game, and he says this is against Transylvania University's incredibly high standards. Dude, Transylvania University has an 88.8 acceptance rate, and I'm going to bet you that most of the people who do not get accepted into Transylvania University, it's not because they didn't meet the admissions standards, it's because they didn't complete their application. This happens all the time at schools with low selectivity. They try to drive their acceptance rate down. Here's what happens. So a kid applies to Transylvania University online. He fills out the application and then never sends in his transcripts. What they do is called an administrative rejection. They reject the application because the kid hasn't given them their transcripts, but it's not a real rejection. It's basically like the kid applied and then they just didn't care enough to complete the application, but they use the administrative rejection to drive down their acceptance rate. So no, Transylvania University, I'm sure it's a wonderful school. Most schools out there do not have incredibly high admission standards. Most schools are not Harvard, and so I don't really think the admission standards generally matters. It doesn't dictate the type of education you're going to get there, because there are 4,000 schools throughout the country, and not every school can have an exceptionally high admissions standard. But this is not a hard school to get into, is my main point. So this guy is already full of it. Let's keep going. The both sides defense used to be a position of the ACLU in fighting for all sides to be given equal opportunities and protections. Moreover, Crankshaw labels Sandmann a provocateur in training with no intention of learning. Putting aside the provocateur label, how would Crankshaw know that Sandmann has no intention of learning? I think that is a really good question, Jonathan Turley. I think that people in any position of authority or leadership should probably refrain from making assumptions about the intentions of teenagers that they have never known or talked to. Surely they shouldn't make those assumptions publicly in order to discredit a teenager. A teenager. Are you guys really, is the left really so weak in its positioning that the very best thing that they can do is to try to discredit a teenager? These people. Well, the statement from someone who expressly identifies as an ACLU staffer on social media, it is not a statement from the ACLU itself. And yet still, the staffer should damn well know better. Yet the sentiment reflects the growing concern over the new direction of the ACLU and the shift away from neutrality in support of free speech rights. Later, Crankshaw responded to the National Review and said, "The views I expect on my Facebook page are my personal views that I shared on my personal time. I have a First Amendment right to express them, just as Nick Sandmann has a First Amendment right to express his." Yes, you do, Samuel. You have a First Amendment right to spew bat-ass nonsense, crazy talk on your Facebook page and attack teenagers. You have a right to do that, my friend. Congratulations. But just because you can doesn't mean you should act like an adult and start expressing some personal goddamn responsibility. I'm really trying very hard not to swear as much as in these videos, guys. I'm trying. I know a lot of you guys have asked me. I'm trying, but sometimes I can't. Okay, let's keep going. Of course, none of us doubted that Sandmann has First Amendment rights. The suggestion of his posting was that the university should have barred the admission of Sandmann due to his views. Indeed, he was expressing outrage that Sandmann was allowed to attend such an institution of higher education. And this just shows, I mean, my God, if there was any more evidence that you needed that these schools are just like little indoctrination factories, it's people expressly saying you shouldn't be able to attend my college because your views are different than mine. It's like there is no acknowledgement anymore that it's okay for people to have different views. It's okay. It's not even preferable for everyone to believe the same thing on every dang issue. That is not an ideal world. And frankly, it would be really boring too. While we have been discussing the intolerance for opposing views expressed at colleges, Crankshaw apparently does not even want to see people like Sandmann allowed into college. One person responding positively was Dr. Avery Tompkins, an assistant professor and diversity scholar, you know exactly where this is going, at Transylvania University. Acknowledged that the university supported diverse viewpoints, but promised to closely monitor Sandmann while he is on campus if he were to cause problems by being disruptive, trolling, or engaging in unethical behavior of any kind. I would immediately document it, just like I would for any student doing the same thing, and he would be putting himself in a position for me to file a conduct report. These people are going after teenagers. Teenagers! Their positions are so weak, this is what they've resorted to. Doing the same thing? What thing? Free speech? Rather than say that there is no reason why this conservative student should be singled out in any way, Tompkins declared publicly, I get where you're coming from. Where would that be? Crankshaw was coming from a place where wrongly accused conservative teenager will be harassed or targeted for daring to take his views to a college. The only crime that Nick Sandmann has committed is being a conservative. That's it. That's it. I don't agree with that kid on everything. I'm sure I don't. I don't even, because I'm not pro-life, right? So I know I don't agree with that kid on everything, but should he be allowed to hold whatever views he wants to hold? Yes. And college is the place where your views should be challenged, where you should come to clarity on what you believe, where you should have to have difficult conversations. Of course, that doesn't happen with students on the right. That only happens with students on the left, right? They're the only, actually, no, strike that, reverse it. Like, the difficult conversations only happen for students on the right because they are surrounded by students on the left. That's what I meant to say. Students on the left don't ever have to have their views challenged because no one from the ACLU ever comes out and says, those kids shouldn't be allowed in college. And you know that's exactly the voice that guy has. I don't even need to see that guy. You know, like, dude, come on. I appreciate Tompkins noting that students cannot be denied admissions based on their political views, though that was once assumed. Yet Tompkins labels this incoming freshman as part of an anti-intellectual movement and publicly assumes that Sandmann will reject core principles of learning. Okay, pause. For those of you who went to college, and even if you didn't, like, just let's rewind back to however long ago it was that you were 18 years old. Do you remember what a moron you were when you were 18 years old? Oh my God. If who I was when I was 18 years old was supposed to be representative of who I am, frankly, at almost 40, and all the opportunities that I had in life were judged based on, like, where I was when I was 18. Like, are you kidding me? I was a complete idiot. I didn't know anything about life at 18. My views have completely changed since then because they have been challenged through conversations with people who disagree with me. This is not hard. This is a freshman being publicly shredded by a professor at his school. Tompkins then expresses that some uncertainty why this student would pick a university dedicated to higher education and the antithesis of what he belies and promotes. Despite Tompkins' later apology, Crankshaw responded that her stated hostility and bias isn't Crankshaw a dude? Okay, you may have, Jonathan Turley, you may have misgendered this, whatever. Hostility and bias towards this student is precisely what wants to see in higher education and why Transylvania University is a great place to learn. Crankshaw was describing the exercise of free speech by someone with opposing views as unacceptable. Tompkins responds that she will be watching him closely. I believe that's also in this. Yeah, you can see right here. So this is our diversity person, and we'll just read the full breadth of what she said in response. Well, I certainly don't support or agree with his views and find his public behavior and rhetoric atrocious and uninformed. He's a teenager. We can't not admit academically qualified students due to their political and personal views. If he ends up in my intro class, fine. He might learn something that is actually based on research and evidence. Oh my God, these are people that are in charge of teaching children. I'm well aware of the anti-intellectual views tied to the organization he's a part of, and so I assume he'd view me as some liberal brainwashing machine. Gee, I can't imagine why, Avery. I can't imagine why anyone would view you as a liberal brainwashing machine. But signing up for Transy in my class means he is required to learn that information even if he disagrees. So what you've basically just said is like, if this kid ends up in your class, all he needs to do is spit back at you exactly what you want to hear. Ben Shapiro talks about this all the time, right? About how he spoke up in class, but when he had to write his papers and do his tests, he wrote what he knew the faculty wanted to hear, even if he knew it was complete and utter BS. You're literally in public writing that is what you are requiring your students to do, is just spit your ideas back at you. Congratulations, you are not a teacher. If he were to cause problems by being disruptive, trolling, or engaging in unethical behaviors of any kind, I would immediately document it, just as I would for any student doing the same thing, as he would be putting himself in a position for me to file a conduct report. So, as far as I know, there has been no issue thus far, though I certainly could be missing info. That said, I totally get where you're coming from, so she agrees with him. I'd be interested in learning why he told Transy, whose mission is the antithesis of what he believes and promotes. So now this faculty who has just spent an entire dang post talking about evidence and you actually have to learn material is probably making a ton of assumptions about what this kid thinks when she has never actually spoken to this kid. So these people are nuts. I mean, per usual, it's just another issue of that confirms everything we already know, which is colleges are not teaching these kids how to think, they are teaching them what to think. Now, Transylvania University has responded to Jonathan Turley's inquiry with the following statement. A college campus is a place where a wide variety of backgrounds, experiences, and opinions of the community, staff, faculty, students, and alumni meet. Transylvania, like nearly every campus, is composed of those holding a full range of viewpoints. Thank you. The differences often form the backbone of a vibrant and challenging educational experience. In this place of divergence, we strive to foster dialogue and listen to each other with generosity and a presumption of goodwill in the pursuit of understanding. Doesn't that sound nice? Doesn't that sound like a nice place you'd like to be? We strive to foster dialogue and listen to each other with generosity and a presumption of goodwill and a pursuit of understanding. Transylvania University, I guess my question for you, if that's actually your value, and you know what, listen, I'm going to act in good faith here. They put out this statement. They can't be responsible for every crazy person that makes a statement about their university, so we can't hold Transylvania University responsible for the actions of this 90s horror movie villain. All we can do is take them at their word. But here's the question that I have. You now have a faculty member that has basically made a statement saying that they are going to be closely monitoring the student and basically expect them to spit back out exactly what they want to hear without challenging themselves and fostering dialogue and and they have no presumption of goodwill. So how are you enforcing this on your campus? If this is the expectation that you want to hold your campus to and the people teaching on it, then how are you holding people accountable when they make statements like Avery Tompkins here, basically saying that the student is going to be in my world now and has to listen to me? The goal of a liberal arts education is to give students the skills and ability to engage in encounters that may cause them to reflect and think differently, or to understand and validate their original belief or viewpoint. In either case, the exposure to the ideas, individuals, and diverse viewpoints and subsequent reflection is the critical aspect. There are two things that, as a university, we're not able to discuss our students without their permission, and personnel matters. Ha ha ha, how convenient. In response to posts on social media and other websites over the Labor Day weekend, we reiterate that point. A review of the situation will be conducted expeditiously by the appropriate university officials. And our professor, Avery here, has issued an apology. I want to apologize for my mistake in signaling out a student and any misunderstandings that arose from that. One of my favorite things about working at a liberal arts institution is that the university community has diverse perspectives. All students, faculty, and staff are able to engage in civil discourse with those whose views may be different from their own and to learn about those views in an academic setting. I value and support those conversations with my students, and I know the students value those conversations as well. So what this tells me is that Avery got a stern talking to by someone who outranks her probably by several steps and was forced to issue this apology, even though we clearly know she doesn't mean a GD word of it. But you know what? Listen, man, I gotta give props to Transylvania University. They seem to have handled the situation as well as they possibly could. Again, we can't hold Transylvania University responsible for every single thing that nutcases on social media like to say about it. It's like they can't help that, man. But I respect the statement they put out. I really do hope they create a welcoming environment for this kid, because this kid deserves to be in a place where he can like mind his own business and, you know, go about what he wants to do and learn whatever he wants to do. This kid has overcome enough obstacles already, harder things than most of us have to deal with in our entire lives. And I really hope he does have a good experience at Transylvania University and continues to go. And I hope the university sticks by what they said. I know that, you know, I really do like to give people and organizations, frankly, the benefit of the doubt. I know sometimes that's a little purposefully naive, but I want to hope for the best. And if the worst happens, then, you know, I'll make another video mocking them at that point. All right, guys, that's all I got this time. Remember, if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would love to have you as a part of the community. And until next time, that's all I got. I'll see you soon.